Welcome back to WagerTalk.com. I'm Ralph Michaels. The sonic boom you heard was the Penn State bubble burst in the Ohio State game last week. We're talking Penn State, Michigan State. Preston the Sports Cheetah and Marco D'Angelo joining me. We talk about how a team can come back off a loss like that. Penn State went into Ohio State with revenge for not making the playoffs. We talked about it last week. Having a 15-point lead dissipate in the fourth quarter. Can they come back?
Well, this is the dream crusher effect for me. We talked about coming off the big game in an earlier video for Ohio State. It's much different coming off a win than it is coming off a loss. And in the fashion in which they lost this game, they had the huge lead. Yes, statistically, they should have not had a huge lead in the game, but they did. And they let it slip away, and they got absolutely manhandled in the fourth quarter. I mean, they put up no yardage at all in the fourth quarter, let Ohio State have that big comeback and get the win. If Coach Franklin can get them up this week going to Michigan State, he's a much better coach than I think he is, because he's going to need some of that. I know Preston's got a degree in psychology. He's going to need to work some of that this week, because I don't know how you spin to Penn State that you're still in it. Because, yes, they got only one loss, but they know what happened to them last year with 2 losses, and I think there's too many teams that are going to set themselves up in front of them, and Ohio State is got clear sailing in the Big Ten.
Well, in Penn State's first 2 years under Franklin, they've actually gone 0-6 against the spread off a straight-up loss, not coming back. But, you know, on the flip side, Penn State is currently on a 15-2 run against the spread the last season and a half. Which Penn State team shows up?
Hopefully the other one, because I'm going to be betting Michigan State. And it's interesting, this is one of those games, there aren't very many before the year where I circle ahead of time and say this is a spot where you need to make sure you don't forget to play the other side, assuming, you know, things do change over the course of a year, 10 weeks in. This is one, though, where we're actually looking at a Michigan State team that is probably better than most anticipated coming in. I didn't have it in me to bet they're over 5.5 wins. That's already cashed. D'Antonio, I mean, they had such a poor season a year ago, and people thought they were going to be rebuilding, and they just don't have the talent that they did previously, which is true, but they're still coached so well, and they play and execute. They've been surprisingly good, and we'll get into them a little bit more. When it comes down to it, the spot for Penn State, like you guys were talking about, it's off the Michigan win, and then going into Columbus to have to play Ohio State, which we figured going into the year we're going to probably have, you know, playoff implications, at least the Big Ten title at stake. And now you have to go into East Lansing and play this game against a really good Sparty team. It's really tough. And so, yeah, if Franklin can do it, all power to them. They're laying 8.5, 9 points. I'll say this, when you actually comp what Michigan State does well this year versus what Penn State does well and what they've, you know, done the last 2 weeks, I think it was Barkley was 21 carries for about 44 yards against Ohio State, just over 2 a carry. And Ohio State's rush defense is 5th in the country. Michigan State's 4th in the country. And it's not like Michigan State hasn't played anybody. There are 2 losses. They actually only had 1 loss till the triple overtime loss to Northwestern. Their loss to Notre Dame. They actually outgained Notre Dame by 150 yards. Might have been like 10 first downs, but they were -3, had 3 turnovers. And that swung that game, but they've beaten Iowa, they've beaten Minnesota on the road, Michigan on the road, Indiana, I mean, even a pretty good Western Michigan team early on in the year. They've played a really good schedule. They have the 4th best rush defense. You look at a similar one, even in the week prior where Penn State did handle Michigan, you take away that first run where Barkley just was untouched and walked through for 70 yards. He had 14 carries for 38 after that, and Michigan is a top 10 rush defense. They've been averaging just over, I guess, like 2.25 yards per carry the last 2 games outside of that one Barkley run. Michigan State, you say, okay, maybe McSorley can throw it through the air, which he hasn't really been able to do very effectively. Michigan State, number 11 against the pass. Total defense, number 9, tied with Ohio State, coincidentally. It just sets up really nicely the way, I guess, you know, Penn State's played Michigan and Ohio State, and now they're playing a really similar defense in Sparty. And again, Sparty's 6 wins. They've played really good teams. I think they're just still kind of undervalued in the market. The thing that kind of, I guess, takes away from maybe this being a bigger spot or a bigger play for me is that they are coming off of a triple overtime game at Northwestern, which they ended up losing, which, by the way, that final score, they scored in every overtime. I think there was 36 points in the overtime. So their defense was really good against Northwestern. Justin Jackson, very good running back, similar, like 41 yards on 17 carries. Like he couldn't run it either, and then things just opened up in the overtime. So there's a ton that goes for me. I'm actually waiting to bet it in case it gets to 10 because I know we need to wrap this video up quick. I looked on the way here. 76 public bet split percentage on Penn State, which actually surprised me. But then I thought, most people probably are looking at that game thinking they got unlucky. They led the whole way, and Ohio State actually won late. And most of us are looking at it here saying, like, Ohio State, they were lucky to be up 15 in the first place. Ohio State dominated them everywhere. So I think we maybe get some value. I don't think that's, public bets aren't going to be pushing it to 10 necessarily, but I'm not in a rush. If it starts coming back to 8.5, 8, then I'll take that. But maybe, just some patience might pay off for a 9.5 or a 10.
You talked about last year, Michigan State lost 45-12. Dan Antonio, 11-1 against the spread, his last 12 revenge spots. Wow, they have big revenge for their loss last year. Coupon code ENDZONE10 gets you $10 off any package, be it a single day, be it a week, be it a month. Make sure you use it. It expires soon. That's ENDZONE10 at WagerTalk.com.